Hey everybody, it's Rachel and Travis with Louder Than 10 podcast. We are officially live. It is our 5th online event through Louder Than 10, and you can subscribe to our podcast by
louderthan10.com/podcast. Feels weird talking in that intro. Seems very formal.
It does.
I think we got to loosen it up a bit.
We will.
Okay.
So thanks for joining us. Today, Sam can't be here. He has the plague. And Sam, we're with you. We're sending you some chicken noodle soup to England, and it's probably going to be moldy by the time it gets there. But just, we got your back, okay? So we're going to do this today, just the two of us. So no one's going to pretend they're Sam. That would be weird.
No.
But we're gonna march through this. It is almost the holidays. So whatever holiday you celebrate, Kwanzaa, that's okay too. And we're going to talk through some of the things that we think might be important and on your brain right now.
What is important on your brain at holidays?
Well, I don't like to think of myself as a Scrooge.
You are such a Scrooge.
Travis tried to play Christmas music yesterday, and I shot him the coldest look I've ever shot anybody on this planet, because that isn't right. It's not Christmas yet. And if you don't celebrate Christmas...
Well, it's not even, I was just playing some classic tunes like the Phil Spector Christmas, which is probably the best one out there, I think.
Yeah.
As far as it's a classic, so.
But you know what? Here's my beef. I'm going to get started on this because I have a rant.
Okay.
And what I think I'm annoyed at is the fact that it's kind of like how Thanksgiving started off as just like, like a day, and then it became a weekend, and then all of a sudden it became like Black Friday became Black Friday week, month, and all of a sudden we have like a year-long sale event around that. And so with Christmas, it's the same thing. Like, it's Christmas Day, and then it was like, well, we got like add the Eve in there, and that's cool.
Okay.
Right? But then all of a sudden now we're like, oh, it's Boxing Week, and then all of the music, you go down to the malls, and like that's all you hear is just like ba la 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 la, and I'm like ba la la. You like, I want to.
Yeah, but we don't even spend time in malls anymore. Like, when's the last time we spent more than 5 minutes at a mall? We don't even buy gifts anymore.
Well, we went to a store to buy a coffee table, and that was bad enough. There were too many holiday decorations, and it wasn't even December the 15th. That's the minimum, December the 15th. If you can't wait that long to start getting your, heebie-jeebies all up and excited about candy canes and shit, that's just too...
You won't even let us have a Christmas tree, which is...
I actually was going to get that sad Charlie Brown Christmas tree.
Yes.
And you said that was a little unnecessary. So.
It's probably a waste.
It was a total waste. We have lights. There are lights in this house, and I put them up so that Travis wouldn't whine and complain. So,
okay.
Anyways,
should we move on and talk about project management?
Yeah, we could. I suppose we're not just going to have like
marital arguments
over the Christmas season. But anyways, the reason that I think part of what gets me like moving around Christmas time and gets me thinking is this whole concept of like, where are people at with their projects? Like, personally, so we're also running design and development projects on the side in aside from doing the project management training. And I know like there are lots of things that are ramping up, right? Like we've got, I don't know how many projects
every year.
Yeah.
I don't know, a few. Yeah.
And the thing with that is that, like, I know a lot of you folks are probably dealing with the same thing, right? Where you've got some projects that are probably launching in January. And so I'm curious, like, I want to know from you guys, like, are things getting hot right now, or are they starting to cool off? And are you able to relax around Christmas time or holidays if you get them?
I know in my experience around the holidays, it's always been a crunch. And everyone, it's like every project inevitably goes over budget and out of scope and all this stuff. That seems to be the case. And we all know this. And but with the end of the year being like this really firm deadline, it's like the one time a year where you're really forced into it. And you gotta like, I think, I don't know, in my experience, that's the time of year when I'm working late. Usually I'm feeling stressed from work. Yeah. I'm getting whipped from you mostly in a negative, terrible way. That's too awkward.
Anyways, that's not what we meant. Well, I think like one of the interesting things is that, so we're talking about like push towards this holiday finish, right? But the irony is like you're losing attention every single day that you get closer, because I don't know about you, but my brain starts checking out in and around that, as soon as those Christmas bell holiday carols start picking up, I'm thinking about getting cozy and warm, having some eggnog. So you're losing the momentum of your project if you're aiming to launch in December. And if you're aiming to launch in January, I see that like that'll push you right through. But like, what do people say about being able to restore your creativity?
Well, you should take breaks. I'm terrible for this because I don't take breaks. I know it's probably wrong, but I've never felt like I needed to, despite all the great advice out there. That's like, you need to rest your brain. You need to do this. Whenever I like,
you're an alien though. So
I go to bed and I'm constantly thinking about work. I'm in the shower thinking about work. And
it's bad.
Oh, it's
insane. For the record, like you don't think about work as work. For you, work is like separate, and it's like this sort of like play time.
That's true, and it's usually our fun work that I'm thinking about, not like some of the other things you have to do.
That's passion.
Yes.
But yeah, so I guess I'm curious about like what other people are doing, and I think that it's kind of important to, no matter if you do celebrate the holidays or not, like you're actually scheduling downtime for your company. And I think that most are, like, I feel like we're getting better in our industry, and most people are shutting down for at least a week, if not 2 weeks. Like all the places I've worked that's been the prerogative. But not you? No,
not in my experience. I've worked at a few places where that's really good, but sometimes, actually a lot of times, that time between the holidays, most people probably take it off, but they're taking it out of vacation time a lot, which kind of sucks because that week's usually a write-off anyway. It's what I can't imagine many of our clients are truly worried of that time between Christmas and the New Year. If they are, then I mean, it's our fault for setting that expectation anyway.
It's like, there's really, when you think about it, there's like no downtime when you're getting off of this string of like projects, and then you come home and your house is filthy, and you have like your grandmother and your stepmother and everybody's mothers and cousins are coming over. You're cleaning the house, you're baking, shopping, you're doing all of these tasks around projects for the holidays. So you're not really getting the downtime you need anyway, right? And the shopping part alone, like that drives everyone absolutely wild. Like it just, and not in a good way, wild in a bad way.
Yeah.
So I feel like you need downtime, which is like very much it's like a selfish but justified selfish thing to do, right? Like we don't give ourselves that because it's like, especially, well, you kind of wear the project management hat too, so
a little bit.
So I'm
learning.
Yeah, that's right. But like we don't allow ourselves, some of us, to actually have that, and so I feel like carving that time out, and sticking to it is like partly on us, and we have to be better at doing that, right? Like as PMs, as freelancers.
That's true. Even if we do quote work through the holiday, it's almost always something that's kind of self-initiated, fun, like learning something. I think 2 years ago I built Nimber over the holidays just for fun.
What's Nimber again?
Nimber what is it? Getnimber.com. Yeah. It's our little budget tool that we made.
It was to know how broke we were at the time when we were working that hard, and so it just tells you if you're broke or not.
This is an interesting thing that I kind of want to talk about, is how being broke, owning your own business. When I was a really young designer, I would look up to all these small studios and stuff, and I think one that stuck out to me was this little company called Nubix. Back in the early 2000s, it was Brad Smith and some other people, and they had this really cool company. They had these shirts, I'm a noob, and they started Verb later on, and on the outside it looked so awesome, and I always looked at this company like, wow, I want to run a ship like that. They'd have blog posts and images, and it would always look like they had so much fun. and I idolized. I was like, holy crap, those guys are having a great time. And, you know, going through being at my job at the time, it wasn't very fun at all. I was an in-house graphic designer in like a vacation real estate company, and it was kind of not the best. And then throughout my career, I worked in other places that seemed fun. Some were, some weren't. But then later on, I read this blog post from Brad, the owner, and he talked about how difficult it was and how terrible they were at running a business at that time, and how broke, and all these horror stories, which I thought was kind of refreshing. Not because they were doing bad, but it was kind of like I don't know, it was just nice to see other people being vulnerable and being like, it's okay, this is really tough. And so, I don't know, we've had similar experiences. I feel like we've learned a lot over the years of doing this, but it's still like, it's not all roses and it's not all fun, right?
I was gonna ask you, like, if you have, you know, ever really had like a fully transparent company, or seen a company that on the outside it looks so terrific, that doesn't have its inner turmoil that's kind of like ripping it apart at the seams. So on the outside, like, everyone's buckling down to rest up for the holidays, and like, projects are great, and then inside you're just like, I know that ping pong table is never gonna get used or whatever. Like,
I think every company looks way cooler on the outside than it is on the inside, or almost, you know, or if that's part of their image, it seems. I think a lot of times the companies that look really boring on the outside are sometimes really fun to work with for some reason.
They've got it together.
They've got it together, and they don't care about the image, maybe. I don't know. We sort of project this idea of, hey, everything's okay, we're making tons of money, blah, blah, blah. Because
we have to, so that our clients believe all of that too, right? Because they're not going to be like, oh, I'm going to work with a company that's really struggling right now. Like, that doesn't ever seem like a good business strategy.
At least that's the perception. I don't know. Like, I think it can be better to be vulnerable, though.
Yeah.
You know, like, there's like T and Lax is one example. In their case studies, they talk about sort of all their failures of their projects, and it's sort of like a humble brag because it's really talking about how good they are. But it's kind of a refreshing
honest
way to do it. It's honest. And they've written blog posts about their struggles and with finances or their team or whatever, and it's kind of nice to see. And it to me, it doesn't make them seem weaker. It makes them seem stronger, actually. So.
I think that's a perception shift, and I think that's happening more and more. Like, I even think around the whole project management, the digital movement that we're having with our project managers, like, I think that it's neat to see people in pockets kind of rising up and saying like, oh, okay, so not everyone's got this figured out, that we don't have a system yet, and we're just starting to like develop sort of, what are some not standard tools, but like go-tos and like processes, and it's not agile or waterfall. Like, it doesn't have to fit into those kinds of boxes. But
it's interesting with as someone who isn't a project manager traditionally going into this, it's awesome to see all these points of views and people speaking up about it. Like, I would hear so many things throughout my career that project managers, they're so hard to work with, and they stifle creativity, and they're just there to police, and they're middle management. I think even one of the Google founders said that kind of a couple of years ago. They're like, oh, project managers only get in the way and stifle, which is total bullshit, right? It's
bad project managers do that.
Yes.
Or project managers that aren't empowered to be able to actually draw on their team for support, and like. I
think part of the problem, honestly, is the name. That's the one part about project management that I hate, is the name project management.
Come up with a new name for project managers? Like,
I don't know. This is tricky ground, because I think our industry is notorious for assigning like new names to job titles.
Like what?
Like this, like user experience design for me is like nails on a chalkboard. Like,
I know.
The actual job itself, I have no problems with, like the tasks, all that's fine. But the name of it, it's awful. User experience. So first of all, user. That's what we call drug users. I think I've tweeted about this, but it's like this total impersonal name. They're people, and like every person is different. They're like emotional, goopy things that uncontained. It's very difficult to predict someone's reaction to something, which is the other part of it, experience. Yeah. We don't design experiences. That's a total bullshit thing. That's like saying we're storytellers when we make websites. We're not. We're not telling stories.
We're not designing experiences.
We're not designing experiences. An experience is a reaction. So it's how someone reacts to the work we do. So it's like, and so I talk about this a lot with people, and they always say, well, what would you say that's better? And I don't know, just graphic design is sort of what that is traditionally. Like when you learn graphic design, it's about sort of creating these reactions, and you can't control a reaction. Everyone's different.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So wait. So you
that's
think
my rant.
You think that all designers could be called graphic designers, and that would cover the gamut? Or
I think it's like an umbrella term that I think it's sort of been, now a lot of people sort of, especially since the web's picked up, a lot of people name graphic design as sort of like you design posters and logos, but I think it's sort of a bigger encompassing umbrella. Yeah. Now you can specialize in areas of it, but it's really the same discipline. You need to know different pieces of it, but it's essentially the same. It's
project part out. They're basically like all project managers are managing people and projects, right? And managers essentially are managing people and indirectly managing projects. So what if we were just digital managers? I know like DPM, like I'm not taking that away from you guys. Brett, I hear you. I see you. I'm not taking that away. But I'm just saying like.
Well, I don't like, even project is okay, but I think the manager thing is funny because.
So projectors? Could we just?
Well, like, I don't know, management, it's so like.
Leaders?
It's like, I don't know. Someone I used to work with had this hilarious quote that I always think about. And he would say, if Bruce Springsteen was the boss, does that make John Cougar Mellencamp the general manager? And I just thought, I think that's hilarious. And it's like this sort of like idea of the general manager. The manager is someone who like makes sure everyone's like at work on time and like heads down. And that's really not what a project manager's job is.
No, but
right?
I would argue, if you want to get into it, that a manager's job is not to make sure that everyone's in on time and is doing what they're supposed to be doing. Because I feel like that is a very top-down, right? Like that's a very like pyramid approach to how you're going to run your time. You're gonna come in and you're gonna be like, this is what you need to be doing. I think that we need to flip that entire thing on its head. And I know there's like a lot of good people in our field that would agree. Like we need the manager to take on a leadership role. Forget all that BS with like, oh, this is what you should be doing. Because, oh man, so this ties right into Nancy Lyon's like article, right? So she just released this article on Medium. So you should definitely check that out because it's a phenomenal article. But the whole idea, and we talked a little bit about this with her, is that people in these middle management positions, they get so protective, right? Everything's fear-based. So usually we think of this on the client side, and it's like, okay, well, I have to translate the vision of that CEO, and I have to figure out how to make a decision about which agency I'm going to select, and that falls on my shoulders. And we just had that happen when we got that project lead, right? Right. So we had a project lead come in, and it like on paper it looked phenomenal, but there were so many red flags that came out of the conversation that it was like, it's like we knew that there were going to be issues in terms of leadership and even just support for management and marketing and all of that, right? So like that whole conversation just makes me like, I get nervous even thinking about how we try to like jam those sort of definitions around this idea of leadership or management, I should say.
You can't put me in a bucket.
I can, well, yeah, I mean, that's right. But yeah, so anyways, I don't know. I feel like that whole topic comes right back to like doing what we're good at, and
yeah. I mean, it's really kind of the least important part of it is the naming, I think. I think sometimes it defines our job as well. Like when we feel like we're a manager, we feel like we have to do managerial things. When we feel like we're a user experience designer, we focus on trying to control someone's reaction maybe instead of, doing something.
I think, yeah, like I think that's the case. But it's interesting too, is like it definitely does come into play on a resume, right? Because a lot, like, so we might have this fabulous idea that everything should exist in a level playing field and it should be relatively flat. Like that's the dream, right? Like, but we know that there are a lot of different places, a lot of traditional agencies that don't thrive on that model. They still will continue to have middle management, and they will continue to have like their account execs and all of these sort of other positions. So if you come in as a junior account manager, say, which is basically a fancy way of kind of saying you're everything except for the like daily tasks of organizing and managing a project, then that person, they're not going to want to stay there. I think that's the thing. Like we see this breakdown where people in these, and I don't want to say this in a bad way, but like people in the sort of lower positions are always looking to move up. Whereas if you sort of have that flat structure in the first place with project management and project managers who do get to be client facing, where they have access right away, right, to both sides of that fence, they're not trying to move up necessarily because they're just enjoying the process.
Right.
So that's the thing is, if you're like, well, naming, it's not that important. It's important to those folks who are on that ladder, right?
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, you like even I have to use user experience designer like in my website that I do this because that's what people are looking for.
Because those are the keywords they're searching for.
Yes.
Which is like, and so unless we are going to train Google, and try to figure out how else we have that conversation.
You kind of have to go with the vernacular.
That's actually, okay, so that's a little bit of a segue, but that's what I'm starting to notice even like as with content development. So I'm working, I think we mentioned this a little bit, but we're working on the redesign for Simply Accessible. And their company is doing things in a totally unique way where like most accessibility organizations are very much about testing and compliance. Now, these guys, they're not about testing and compliance because that's just this much of the bigger picture. But if I don't use those keywords somewhere, people who are looking for that kind of work and won't, can be open to a bigger picture will never find them. So, unless
that's true.
Black hatting, but I don't.
I don't even think that works anymore. No, you just get penalized in the end. So
But yeah, anyways, sorry, that was a segue, but I think it's important because it's like that whole concept of what's in a name, and there's a lot in a name.
Yeah, there is a lot.
Like your name actually, I think means Lone Star, doesn't it?
Yes. It's a very Texan name.
I know. You don't strike me as a Texan.
I've barely been to Texas. Actually, that's not true. We've been to Texas.
He fits right
Texas
in.
is awesome. Mm-hmm. I'm happy to have a Texan name.
No, you're not.
Yeah, I am.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I used to never be. I've made peace with my name.
I've made peace with my name.
Yeah.
You know what mine means, right?
I forget. What does it mean?
I was waiting to see. It means female lamb. And I in no way do I find that flattering, but
no,
it's an ew.
I like lamb. Lamb's like a good animal to be. It's a pretty innocuous thing. Like you can't be.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Just always knows how to say the right things.
Yeah.
Jerk. All right. Okay.
Let's talk about something.
I want to talk about something, and can because we're good at ranting. Yes. Actually, the first and last time that we've ever done a podcast with just the two of us. Can we? Brief the audience.
Talk about this.
Was a few years ago. We just moved to Vancouver, and our friend Will had told us about a nude beach.
You didn't tell us it was a nude beach.
No, I totally ruined the story.
you did.
Damn it. Okay.
There's the punchline right up front.
Just back up. Pretend I didn't say that. He told us about one of the best beaches that like existed in Vancouver that we'd never heard of and never been to. And so he's like, you got to check it out. He said, just don't be surprised if there's some weird naked guy walking up the stairs. And of course we were like, oh, it's just, different culture. Just
I think it was some weird naked guy selling you drugs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's probably why it didn't strike me as that odd, because it's Vancouver and there's a lot of drugs. But anyways, so the whole thing was that we basically talked in this podcast about us discovering by going down this crazy flight of stairs that there actually was a nude beach at the bottom, and just not knowing what to do with that information, because we were a little prudy because we came from Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
I don't think that makes someone prudy or not prudy necessarily.
No, but okay, so I was more like that then. And because I knew you, I was less like that after.
Okay.
If you're going to take that. You want that? Here, take it. Okay. So that's the last time we attempted to do that. And that you can't actually drag that old one up. I don't know if I'd recommend it.
I would recommend it because...
Where would they find it?
That's at questioneverything.ca.
That is a mostly not safe for work site. But that's because that was another side of us that that didn't come out right. That was a side of questioning everything that sometimes questions things that you're like, I can't show that at work. So just be aware that there's other sides to us. We're multifaceted. Anyways,
Place to vent. Okay,
let's talk about this, because this comes full circle, you guys. So we're talking about like horrible bosses, the concept or companies that don't appear to be what they are from the outside on the inside. Can you think of an example of something like that, maybe?
A horrible boss? Or what are you talking about?
And how it might link up to this whole holiday season?
Oh, you're wanting me to bring up Santa Claus.
Yeah, I want you to bring it up.
The ultimate horrible boss. Okay. So we all revere Santa Claus, right? Except for Rachel. But she's pulled me over to this side where I've grown this giant, I don't know, chip on my shoulder for Santa and the holiday.
Coal, maybe?
It's kind of, can you tell us why you have such a problem with Santa?
So here's the thing. Santa Claus is a bastard, all right? He is probably like 227 years old. And I won't go into the details of the history there, but he basically is an old white man who is the CEO of the worst company imaginable, right? So he employs little people.
Yeah.
For either no wages or slave wages. Like we don't know, we don't have the particulars on that, right? Like they basically work all around the clock all year.
Yes.
And bust their butts at Christmas, right?
Yes. Not only does this happen, so the assumption, I'm assuming they manufacture everything in the North Pole.
Obviously, all the factories you hear about are actually in the North Pole.
Well, it's either that or it's a giant, they're all pirated materials is what I'm thinking. It's like
rip-off?
They're ripping off from other companies into their own sweatshop, all this stuff, right?
Copyright infringements are ridiculous.
But yeah, so probably terrible working conditions. It's in the North Pole. If you're going to be located anywhere, it's the furthest place from the rest of society. You're isolated. This time of year, it's dark, basically 24 hours a day. Yeah,
they keep you at work as long as possible. There's probably a laundry.
They make you sing songs and dance while can you imagine day-to-day work if they made you stand at your desk and dance and sing holiday tunes? Yeah.
No, yeah, they've probably got built-in laundry service and childcare, and you just
dusty ping pong tables in the corner. It's like a startup or something where they have.
They probably have to make them shorter for the elves to even use, and then Santa probably didn't consider that because.
And elves, let's be real.
Well, let's be real.
Have you ever seen Idiot Abroad? Do you remember that episode? You guys should see this. There's this. Was it in the China episode where there's this town where they've gathered all the dwarves they could find in this theme park and made it little, which is
politically correct term for small people, little people.
Yes, I believe. And so Santa's workshop is essentially gathering these.
basically taking advantage of little people all over the world.
Yes, and putting them to work for.
Yeah, under the guise of this jolly holiday Christmas.
Furthermore,
Mhm.
this was kind of, I think, the advertisement of it, everything else is like this glorification of sweatshop labor from the industrial age. I think, you have children growing up to learn that, it's okay to put these little people to work and build toys.
For you, and if you're like a rich little kid, you're going to get better presents than a poor little kid, right?
Yeah.
Or just kids that are in different countries altogether and maybe don't recognize that Santa is the CEO of the biggest corporation in the world. Like a little evil, right?
Kind of evil.
Kind of evil.
And then meanwhile, all these other companies are using him to exploit, like Coca-Cola, sell soda pop and all these unhealthy things. So.
Did you guys know that the sort of updated version of Santa Claus with this jolly countenance actually came from Coca-Cola? And I think that was in the 60s or 50s or 60s or something. And they're actually responsible for that image of Santa. Before that, he was not jolly.
Right, he was like
Kringle-y more. Like green.
He was really creepy, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, he was.
Wasn't he like a
wizard?
Pagan wizard thing or something like that? Yeah,
pagan wizard, and he had I think he had like a staff, and he'd give kids oranges and like wooden toys, and then it kind of went into like, well, that's not good enough.
Kids don't like oranges.
No. Yeah, so
if I got an orange for Christmas.
You know what kills me? So we want to talk about ego, right? Like most of the companies out there, the worst kind of companies are the ones that their ego runs everything. And so that's what you kind of learn to understand about who they are. Santa Corp has so much ego that he actually gets all of these suckers to dress up like him and go to the mall for like a month around December just to like plug his image, to be like, oh, and what would you like, little girl or boy? And like, that is the most conceited thing I can think of a person do. Can you imagine if Facebook CEO Zuckerberg had like minions dress up like him and get paid minimum wage to sit in a mall while a kid peed on them? Like, that's just horrendous.
Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah.
And those suits cost like $2,000. Hey, like the authentic Santa suits.
Don't the Santas have to buy them for themselves too?
Yeah.
And so.
And like, don't get me started on the sleds and all of the carbon emissions. Like, anyways, we wrote an article.
Yes.
Also in Question Everything.
It's on the homepage under the recommended.
It's safe. It's safe for work. Just know that the headline says prick on it. So if people think it's like pricking your finger, then that's probably not a bad thing either. So you can check that out if you want. But
yeah. Well, how does this relate back to project management? Because I think it does. I really think it does. Because it's got like, I know I'm stretching. This might be a stretch. But I think we've sort of like all these companies that we build and everything, we're kind of like building these Santa's workshops in some ways where it's, and I don't know how you get around it, honestly. Like it's sort of human nature to put our best foot forward and talk about this. So I think, I don't know, it's like we Instagram only the good things in our lives and we tweet, oh, look at this amazing meal I'm eating right now. And it's like this privileged sort of thing, right? And I think our companies that we build are sort of in line with this. How can we change that? Like, or do we need to? Is this like, what is this saying about our society?
Terrible things about our
We live in a society, goddammit.
Yeah, we have to function as a society. Well, okay, so I think that you can bring this back full circle. So I think part of this whole thing is like, like typically, so project managers have kind of been historically the underdogs. Like we don't, there's no ego. We can't have an ego in what we do. We're like, did you hear about that project that I managed? Like nobody cares, right? Nobody cares.
No one looks at an award-winning design project and goes, "Oh, I wonder who managed that."
No, exactly. So we have this sort of underdog role, but I think what's happened is that, like, okay, it's a little cheesy, but the idea of us all kind of grabbing hands and we're holding on to each other and being like, "Look, I'm not going to let you down. We've got each other's backs here. We're building up this momentum. And actually, I wrote an article about this, and I think it's going to be coming out soon, hopefully. And can I say?
I don't think so.
I can't say.
No, don't say.
Okay, I can't say.
You might not accept it.
Oh yeah. They'll be like, no, that's a terrible article, so I won't say. But
But we have our own magazine coming out next month, where we can talk about anything we want.
Anything we want. And so maybe we should talk about this. But the idea that, yeah, we do have to sort of create a community. And I think that community doesn't have room for ego. And that community is okay with calling out elephants. Like Ben Aston, he did an amazing talk for us at a local digital PM meetup. And he actually runs the digitalprojectmanager.com. So check that site out as well. But his whole thing was that, like, we have to call out those elephants because it's our job. And if we passively avoid those, then we're actually doing more harm. And I think those are the elephants, like those ego elephants and like those like Santa Claus bosses that are basically like, everything's great. Like we have to call that out.
And be a little more, have a little more humility, vulnerability in the company, kind of be okay with being like, we had a rough year. We had a rough summer, let's be real.
Like we've been working our asses off for full.
We put so much effort into the louder than the project management stuff, and that we really for a long time we neglected bringing in client work. And in the end, I think it really got us further on that stuff. Yeah. But we took a big hit transitioning everything over.
Because I think you have this glorious idea of how fast things are going to turn over, but you forget like how much of what you're doing is foundation building, right? So like even when you're working on projects with clients, like most of the work you're doing is setting the foundation in the first place.
Yes.
Like you have to do that, because if you skip that and you try to just jump into like, hey, we're best friends and like look at how amazing this design is, like you haven't set up all those expectations about, hey, this is how the relationship works, this is how we get along. Mm-hmm. And on a company perspective, on a company level, like that sort of I guess tailoring your identity and your branding, like a lot of that work you don't get a paycheck for, there's especially as the owner of a company. And so I get that fear. Like that's a crazy amount of fear to have, to be like, oh man, like what if people find out that things are not like, whoa. But I think that's just a reality. Like everybody is
every I don't know, someone famous said, I don't remember who, so I wish I could
Santa,
credit it. Probably Santa said that like every agency, no matter what the size, is 2 months away from bankruptcy, right?
So every agency, no matter what, how great things are looking on the outside.
Yeah.
And remember Rob? So he's our accounting consultant, and he's awesome in terms of just kind of calling it like it is. And he said, so remember that every step and change that you make today, you're not going to start to see the effects of that on the books for at least 6 to 8 months. So like think about that on your projects. Like if you're trying to get better at process, or as a company, as a leader, a CEO, you're like, well, I think I want to become more transparent. I want to say put like Nancy would like be a proponent of instituting like childcare on site, or having just like perks where people can work from home and do like switch days or whatever. But if you decide to do that tomorrow, you're not going to start to see the full benefit of that for 6 to 8 months. And most people I know, like in terms of agencies and stuff, they give up. If they try it for 6 weeks and it doesn't show.
Oh yeah, it's so fickle. Yeah.
They just give up.
Yeah, especially a smaller company. We're so tempted to be like, oh, this new thing we tried out, it's not working. We're still losing money, or we're not getting clients because we've updated things. But like the whole process of hiring design services, of, vetting that, of starting a project, that alone takes like 2 or 3 months sometimes. And by the time you're into it and you've got a few cases to test it against, like it's,
like how would you change the way that you worked if you knew, okay, well, if I'm bringing in bigger clients, like they're not going to actually start turning over for at least 6 months, because that's how much work it's going to take to get them in the door. Like how are you going to change how you buffer that time in terms of your estimating? Right? Like you're going to want to try to include that in the value that you're bringing to the client, and like onboarding them and getting them familiar and all of that, right? Like
it's crazy. Can you imagine, like Santa Claus has probably been working, he's got the same year every year, so he doesn't have to deal with this. Or do you think they have to change with the times? Is like,
no.
They got to bring in new.
Okay. You want to hear?
Yeah, I want to hear. Okay.
So this is what I'm thinking. So there's a lot of new movements that are kind of coming up, like the Yes All Women one, and like there's sort of like, remember, is it Megan Amram? She did that whole. It's like that whole spoof of science for women, and like so there's this whole thing where we're not creating toys for boys and for girls. We're creating toys for kids. And so I bet you anything, like Santa's just sweating under that suit, like just massive globs of sweat. It's greasy, obviously, because he has to now change his strategy because he can't brand things for boys or girls.
Right.
And what about people who aren't like cisgendered? What if they don't, sort of identify as a boy or a girl? Anyway, Santa's going to have to up his game.
Yeah.
If he wants to compete in this global market, he's going to have to smarten up.
Do you think he has? I guess that's sort of.
No, I feel like he's not.
I guess it depends on, I don't know. This is.
What?
Because let's be real, it's the parents. In reality, when you look at that part of it, I don't know if they've progressed.
Well,
I don't know.
if you look
this is running off the rails.
No,
Let's
it is.
change this.
Okay, but just one second, because like the whole iPhone kids, right? Kids who get up angry that their parents or Santa didn't get them their white iPhone for Christmas, or that now it's the 6 or whatever, the 6 Plus. Like that's getting worse. So to me, this idea, like maybe Santa, maybe it's not. Maybe Santa didn't take all the blame for this. Maybe parents. And you guys.
I think it's the idea of Santa, though, that's like
the idea where just like gifts just fall out of the sky down your chimney, or if you don't have a chimney, somehow Santa's sneaking into your house at night.
I just have a question. This is off topic, but I kind of have a question. So we don't have children, so this is
no, we don't.
This is an important part of this conversation. We don't have children.
We have a fur baby. He's right on that chair.
Oh yeah, we got to work in cats. So.
Yeah, that's a cat.
There's a cat. Okay. I want to save the cat conversation for Sam.
Sam needs to
He's
talk
the
about
expert
cats.
on this.
Yeah. Okay.
So okay.
So what's your?
If we had kids, and this might be an important thing, I want you guys to chime in if we're the one of 4 people that's listening. But how do you approach the subject of Santa with a child when you have this much disdain for the idea of Santa Claus? Like, is it okay to like just talk about it and give your child oranges and wooden toys? Or are you like, or is that like lying to a child? Are you okay with?
Yeah, are you guys okay with lying to your children? There's no judgment attached in that statement. It's an open-ended question.
Like, on one hand, I'm like, I want to be honest and tell the truth. I don't like what harm can come from telling the truth. On the other hand, I'd be like, I don't want my kid being the weird kid at school who's like, meh, or the one who spoils it for everyone else.
Yeah, those kids were jerks, actually.
Yeah.
I didn't find out about the truth until I was in grade 6, and it was very embarrassing. And I cried because I found out that Santa and the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy, and I was basically, look, all my options for candy and money out the window.
Yeah, you don't.
Because now you don't.
And you surely don't want your kid to be like the Richard Dawkins of Santa.
That would actually be awful.
That's
just
the other
smoking a lot and just condemning everything that you can't see.
Santa is. I'm not gonna try and do it.
Don't.
No. Okay. Let's just move on.
Yeah, I don't know.
So that was totally unrelated, but I wonder about this.
Important.
Okay, so I think this could also have something to do with honesty. Let's stretch this back into our projects, right? So honesty, project honesty. Mm-hmm. When we bring in clients, there is often this crazy disconnect of the sales team, business development, before it hits project management, right? You have like, oh yeah, we'll give you the world. You got $10,000, no problem. We can do this. You need a store, no problem. We can, we really want your business. And then it comes in the door, and then, the project manager, if they're not involved in that process, maybe the designer, the developer, they're like, oh my God,
oh man,
these lies.
Can you imagine if Santa Claus was your client? He might be the worst client.
Probably the worst. But what about a real client? Like how would you deal with, like, what do you recommend to organizations where this happens? Because I know this happens a lot. We have friends that have to stay late every year because their client's been told, like, oh yeah, we can get like this ad run out for
Yeah.
holidays, and we're having all these components to it.
I mean, I think it happens well before that first moment you even have contact with your client. Like it's all about internally your process that your team has all agreed to. And I think that process has to be about setting those expectations before you even have a conversation with your potential. And I think that the person who has the conversation with the potential has not a burden, but like a huge responsibility. Because if that breakdown starts to happen where people get so uncomfortable with the concept of no, right? And this is not the first time that we've talked about it, but like, instead of it being about no, we can't do that, if someone asks you, can we build this amazing empire together, what we're saying is, well, we can take path A or we can take path B. And I think like Patrice, who's a digital project manager, I have to give her credit, because this is like, honestly, I did not think of this is where I first heard about it. And she's just like, you have to just follow that pathway and basically like outline all the consequences, and then you just basically act as like an authority figure and guide them down the right path. So then you're not saying no and rejecting. Right. Like, so that's where it starts.
How would you tell someone who works at a company, who's a project manager, who kind of maybe they're not allowed in those first client meetings, or maybe they're just not consulted for those? How do you make a change like that in an organization?
Well, I think Brett would actually probably be a better person to answer that question, because I know.
So ask Brett Harnett.
Ask Brett how he did it, because he talked a little bit about that when we were in our chat. But I know, like, Brett, you wormed your way into those meetings. You started just being like, finding out the right answers and asking the right questions. And I think that would work in any situation. Like, you have to be audacious enough to actually ask those questions and challenge the status quo. And here's the thing: if you were working for Santa Corp, I don't think that you'd have the freedom and empowerment to be able to ask those kinds of questions and challenge that process. So
now, do you think this is something we've experienced recently, or I think throughout our careers, and I think it's probably like at is, it might be hard for a project manager or a developer or designer to step up because they feel like they're overstepping their boundaries, things like that. What do you?
I think that's a fundamental shift in how you look at people in society, and so, like, a person who's, I've always rejected the pedestal, like celebrities. Like, I will walk up Mr. Sasha, what's his name? Sasha Barnes?
Who?
I don't know Sasha. I don't know celebrities. I don't know them.
That's why.
That's part of the problem. But I would walk up and I would shake their hand
Burt
and be
Reynolds,
like, yeah, well, Burt, he's all right. But like, I would just decrease any sort of like, there's a difference between you and me, because I wholeheartedly reject that. And
you don't get starstruck ever?
No, like I think that when I get that feeling of like, oh man, you're such an amazing person, it's because of people being brave enough to challenge those things. So, like,
based on accomplishment of like real things,
being brave to say things that are hard to say, like Nancy freaking Lyons is my. Yeah. I'm gonna tell you, Nancy, you're my hero in that way, because it is so hard for so many people to say things that. Because we always fear, like, well, what if we say, are we going to hurt people's feelings? Or are we going to rock the boat? Or so for me, I think it's a fundamental shift in how you see different people. And I guess I just outright reject hierarchies. Like, I'm not going to be afraid of someone who's got like 100,000 followers on, like, it, for me. So yeah, I don't know.
It's ridiculous. No, I think that's true. Like, I think it's ridiculous, the idea that someone has all the knowledge or all the talent and they're put on top, and they just happen to, because they've started a company, they've kind of done it single-handedly, and it's not from the help of, how many other people, right? Yeah. And so it's sort of,
so maybe I get it. It's like, again, be audacious, have the nerve to question and challenge. And I don't know where that comes from. I feel like, in a way, you have to look and ask yourself, like, well, what do I feel like is somehow making me different than somebody else that I can approach, or like what behaviors have they sort of reflected?
It's a tough thing. It's a really tough thing to go. Like I've struggled with that. That's why I can't hold the job. Honestly. Like, in my career, I think I've worked for a few places as an employee. I don't think I've actually worked for a place longer than like a year and a half, maybe, because like I get to 8 months and I get antsy and I'm like, ugh.
But then do it my way.
But then I don't actually like go out and like talk to someone who's like and tell them why. I'm just like, ugh, this sucks. I'd rather just do this on my own. And then I go back into self-employment. And so that's kind of where we've been for 5 years now, really. So
well, and so maybe, okay, so most project managers and even most freelancers, like that choice to go out on your own, you do have to have a little bit of that, right? Like a little, I don't know if it's like being bullheaded or just like kind of this like resistance to wanting to follow other people's processes because they don't make sense to you.
Yes.
And I'm not saying like that means that you're better in some way, but just that, again, it has to do with like, you know, kind of having the balls to be like, oh, I reject this and I'm going to try and find out a better way. So I feel like naturally project managers and freelancers and obviously agency owners, they're all good at that.
Yes.
And they might work well with others, but they don't, you know, like we're kind of bad at taking advice maybe.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of that too, because even for us, I think bringing, you know, if we brought in an employee or something like that, or a partner, it's really tough to like, because we're so invested in it and we've been in it for so long, it's really hard to let go of the reins ourselves. And I would understand with our intensity into it, why it would be tough for someone looking in and being like, hey, you guys need to change something. Because we would be resistant. We'd be like, no, we know what we're doing.
We get, like Carson is does consulting like through Louder Than 10 when there's agency work. And so like I can only imagine, Carson, how interesting it's been for you, because we use telepathy to communicate, and I know that hasn't quite gotten to that third party pyramid. I also can just like tap Travis on the back, and so because Carson, you're in a totally different city than us, like, you know, there's just a natural communication breakdown that happens because you know, can't talk about things over dinner. So I can't imagine, like, it's got to be extremely hard.
Yeah. So how do you, like, from our perspective, like, how would you, if we had, let's say we had someone working for us and they, I don't know, it was just like a normal 9-to-5 thing. And how would you, as an owner, make sure that to communicate that, you know, you're open for change, and how would you follow up and actually be perceptive to that change?
Yeah.
What would make you a better leader in that way?
Yeah, because like that's the one thing is like everyone's like, well, I always ask, I always, you know, check in to see, you know.
Yeah, but that's bullshit.
Not real.
Yeah. How many times have you been asked as an employee to, whether it's an employee evaluation or your boss asking you, hey, how you doing? Just checking in. Like, you can't you kind of have to read between the lines.
It's like those restaurant cards where they're like, we want your feedback. You don't want our feedback. You don't give a shit about what we have to say.
How often
like,
do you honestly answer those? And then it could be like,
even if you do, what do they do? What do they change?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean,
send Santa one of those.
Yeah, we were talking about this with surveys actually too, on how, you know, you got a survey recently where the only answer was extremely satisfied or not satisfied at all.
There was no NA.
And even it was like for drive. It was for the local
insurance, like in driving.
And we don't drive.
We don't drive.
But they made you answer all of those questions, and so it's just like, I guess. But then they take these answers as like 30% of people said they agree with this thing.
Okay.
So it could be.
I'm busting open this giant metaphor. Okay.
Okay.
So you were telling me how you went to that talk, and that woman, the teacher, was talking about seeing a tree, right?
Right.
Okay. So you talk about that part, because that's
okay. So last week I went to a Creative Mornings here in Vancouver, and you could probably see it on the Creative Mornings Vancouver site. And her name escapes me right now. I'm so sorry.
On the spot.
But she's a First Nations actress, teacher, and she had this great saying that I think it's originated from First Nation storytelling, but it's a way to look at our projects. And so if you look at a tree and you're one person, you can see it from a single perspective. So from your perspective, maybe you're standing far away. You can see the entire tree. It looks green from your side and everything looks peachy. You see a healthy tree, and that's not wrong. You could be someone else, though, on the other side of it, and it could be burnt like a lightning bolt hit it. And on your side, it would look in terrible condition, and it's unhealthy, and it needs help. And that's not wrong. And so you kind of need to surround the tree by several different people to see all angles of it to get a true picture of the health. Like, nobody's wrong in their own perspectives, but it's not a complete picture.
Which is why people who are working on the project should also be helping to estimate and schedule that project.
But you need to see all sides of the tree.
Right. Yeah. That's a really good metaphor.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought it was really great.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important because we always come in with a skewed perception. So again, coming back to that sort of reference to how would you as a boss make a more open climate for your, I mean, not only are you asking them, like, we have to get better at listening. Like, listening is seeing the tree from different angles. And I think that is actually pausing to consider not what you think you're hearing and not through the lens of your own, right? You have your own lens that you're filtering things through, but actually saying, like, is this what you're saying? Is this right? Like, do I have it? Is it close? Or, getting closer and closer to that, because we're so ignorant sometimes.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
yeah. It's really easy just to see that part of the tree and just assume everything's awesome,
great. So. Yeah. So anyways.
And I mean, that comes back to the externally looking in at the companies too. Typically the company just shows that outside perspective, and you don't really see everything. And
actually too, if you took it as the CEO, say, like, he might have that, 10,000 foot view of the tree or the company or whatever, and to him things will look totally different. Like, that's why I think owners carry a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress, because they can see things from a totally different angle. And maybe they can see that this is the only tree left in the forest, and the other trees are getting hacked down. And so there's this sort of balance between being completely honest and transparent, but not freaking out your entire team if things aren't going that well.
Yeah.
So anyways, I don't know if any of you guys have any questions. We're kind of rounding out the hour. I don't know how we managed to talk for a whole hour.
I don't know.
Santa.
I don't know. I hope it wasn't too boring or ranty and people aren't angry. There's probably only two of you, so don't worry that much.
If one of you's angry, we can talk about it.
Just talk to us.
Well, let's have an honest, transparent conversation about it. Okay?
Yeah. So I don't know. Should we just do the plugs and wrap it? If anyone does have any questions, throw them in right away on Twitter or in the Hangout.
There's a hashtag LT10 if you want. I don't know.
I feel like we might have to change that hashtag.
Someone else is using it.
Yeah,
it's really
there's some weird stuff.
Like, you guys might get the wrong idea about us if you haven't already. So anyway.
I'm pretty sure that'd be the right ideas.
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
So
Scrooge, talk about it.
So we're really sad that Sam couldn't be here with us, and we're hoping we'll just reschedule that another time so we can get like the good grit on all of his, like, best guy you'll ever meet. Well,
yes.
And I mean, there are a lot of good people out there, so I don't want to like make anyone else feel less good, but Sam is a great guy. So I hope you feel better, Sam. I wanted to kind of tease you guys with a surprise. Brett and I have been working on something as like a little present for digital project managers, and I can't say what it is, but on the 15th, keep your eyes out, because there's going to be something announced, and that thing is going to start happening in January. So I won't tell you too much more, but we're really excited about it, and we hope that you guys kind of like it. What else, Trav? We've got
next week, for anyone in Vancouver or anyone who wants to fly to Vancouver, that'd be awesome. We can even put you up, right?
At our house in the bathtub.
We've got a local meetup. I don't think there's any talks or anything. We're just getting together with all the local project managers to play some games, have some drinks,
And actually
talk.
get
What else are we
feedback
doing?
about like what
Right, we're going to talk about
upcoming-
some projects.
like
and
we have some really
talks
neat
and-
ideas around that, but we want to make sure that those are in line. And so if you guys don't have a meetup group, like there's so many good people putting them on around like Philly, Phoenix, and I was going to say Arizona, but that's the same with and New York, and just so many good people doing that. So make a group if you don't have a group, or join a group if you can. They're so helpful, and it's just great to feel like we've got people that love us and support us.
So when and where is ours?
So ours is next Wednesday night at 6 p.m. at the Mobify office. They're sponsoring the location and a little bit of booze, and we'll be there to help sponsor as well.
Yeah.
And that's
the
17th. So come and join us if you are in town. Finally, just check out our magazine. We're taking subscriptions for writing, and we're not doing
submissions.
Did I say subscriptions? That one, submissions. We're taking submissions, and we're trying to kind of get away from the top 10 lists, because those are great and they serve a great purpose, but we want to unravel and unwrap the sort of humanness inside of what we do, and that's extending outside of our industry.
Yeah,
different
less
stories.
about the tools, more about the stories and the people. These are actual stories, actual storytelling,
telling stories.
not just making websites.
Yeah. So please submit your writing ideas, and let's do that. We're excited. That'll launch in January, so keep your eyes peeled. Thank you guys for putting up with us for a full hour. I don't know if it was entertaining for you, but the cat was smiling. So.
I had fun, so I don't care.
Yeah. And next month we'll be here with Dave Pryor. So Dave is a phenomenal guy. He's like well versed in the agile world and does a whole bunch of training, and just like amazing writer and all around person. So he'll be on, and we're gonna have a little fun next month. And I'll keep you posted on those dates soon.
Okay, let's wrap it.
All right, guys, have a good one. Bye.